Welcome back to Getting Open with me, Andrea Miller. I have such an amazing and impactful show for you today. My guest and I walk through a handful of such helpful, actionable steps and give so much context to helping pull it all together when the bottom falls out. In addition, because this is coming out during the holiday season, we also talk about how to make dealing with your insufferable relatives a superpower. No joke, you can do it. And my guest, Dr. Rick Hanson, is here to help you do it with me. Welcome, Dr. Rick Hanson, PhD. Rick Hanson is a psychologist, senior fellow at UC Berkeley's Greater Good Science Center, and a New York Times best-selling author of 7 brilliant books that have sold millions of copies and have been translated into 33 languages. He has lectured at NASA, Google, Oxford, and Harvard, and many other places, taught in meditation centers worldwide, has been featured on the BBC, CBS, NPR, and so many other major media outlets. Rick is the founder of the Global Compassion Coalition and the Wellspring Institute for Neuroscience and Contemplative Wisdom. I knew I was going to stumble on that one, as well as the co-host of the super cool, popular podcast, Being Well. Rick, it is so nice to see you again. Thanks for being on Getting Open.
Thank you. And Andrea, I do feel compassionate for people who need to stumble through that, any bio and that bio. And you did it so gracefully. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Listen, it's like, I feel like it's our mistakes help give us character and define us. So if I don't want to disappoint the audience by not coming through with a little more character and, color.
Now, can I ask you a question? I'm turning the tables
love it.
on
Yes,
you.
Let's let it rip.
What do you think defines our character besides our mistakes?
Oh my God, I've never been asked that. I would say what defines our character are innate values, which maybe it's like, what does that even mean? So let me try to give, not give kind of a lame
your natural goodness,
answer.
Your innate lovingness.
Yeah. And I mean, when I think of things like honesty and things that you really value, goodness, gratitude, integrity, right? To me, those are the those handful of things that you prioritize. And let's face it, we are often in our daily lives, we bump up against having to make those decisions. And I feel like what we're choosing, it's like, it would be faster not to have integrity, or it would make me more money to, maybe I want to be successful and have integrity. Well, what do I want more? Right. So I think of our character, it's not just the values, it's the choices we make to uphold those values, what we say yes to, and then what we say no to. I think that's what I would say, but what about you?
Well, I was really, the reason I hopped on board this was, number one, because you and I have a lot of rapport with each other, even though we don't see each other very often. So I felt I could kind of get away with coming back. And the second, besides that enabling condition, my motivation was you dropped there something that is true, but which in isolation has unfortunately become this sort of meme and platitude and bedrock belief in our culture that what you learn from is pain. Pain is the great teacher. You learn from your mistakes, you learn more from your failures than your successes, which is ridiculous. You learn more from negative feedback than positive feedback, also ridiculous. Successes tell you what's worth continuing. Failures just tell you what didn't work, but it leaves a whole universe open of other possibilities. Negative feedback, same way. Positive feedback tells you that you hit the target and maybe even got really close to the bullseye. So now you know more and more what to actually do. And as kind of central to my own work, as someone who's very interested in how you become resilient and happy in the context of worldly challenges, including the most recent elections around the world, how do you do that? Well, the way you do it is by turning to experiences of what you want to grow, which are almost always positive experiences. They're positivity of the sense of, self-worth, determination, moxie, compassion for other people, growing skillfulness, growing emotional intelligence. Experiencing those things is positive. Mother Nature evolved systems that mark and motivate what's valuable for us to grow through its positivity. So yeah, that mainly we develop in this life through turning toward the good and taking in the good, in part because it then helps us deal better with the bad along the way.
I love that. And I appreciate, in fact, I was going to ask you about, you've got a famous video. I had a question on that I'm just going to go ahead and lean into now, or, ask about, that talks about how we can change our brains for the better. And you talk about there's a baked in negativity bias into our brains, but you advocate for positive neuroplasticity. And I'd like to add, I like that you're planting a flag in the ground to say, yeah, you can learn from your mistakes, and yeah, you can learn from failure and so forth, but positive reinforcement and success and so forth, it's like those are also really profound teachers and give us lots of incentives and so forth. So this idea of just, and by the way, as an entrepreneur, as a mom, it's like every role that I've played, I've made plenty of mistakes and learned from those things. But I think this idea of not turning it on its head, but really saying, let's scan for the positive. And again, you talk about this in the video. I would love for you to explain to people how they can overcome that negativity bias and use, positive neuroplasticity. And we'll come back to the election in a moment, but I feel like that's a great way for, hopefully we can create a foundation here that my guests listening will understand, okay, here are some of the takeaways that they can implement in their own lives.
Yeah, very good. So in short, we do have a brain that has what's called a negativity bias. This is well established. Just people can Google the term. It'll pull up a lot of studies. My short version is that we have a brain that's like Velcro for bad experiences, but Teflon for good ones. Even though usually what we want to grow is a positive experience. Now, occasionally we need to experience something that's not pleasant, and we need to face it. We need to face our remorse. We need to sometimes become disenchanted and face our disappointment as we realize that this job, this relationship, this government is not going to really help us. We need to do something different. That's not a happy experience, but it's still a beneficial experience. So I tend to use beneficial as a better word than positive, because it's really easy to trivialize positive experiences and even just say, you're just doing a spiritual bypass with your privilege. No, I understand that critique. I'm quite privileged in my own circumstances, but I'm really talking about a very tough-minded recognition of the brain's evolved vulnerability to negative experiences and the serious challenges that people face in their ordinary lives, ignoring politics, just ordinary lives. And so we need to grow strengths inside. So how do you do that? So the how of that is really straightforward, and it blew my mind when I first stumbled on it intuitively in college, being pretty miserable with an enormous hole in my heart from what was missing in my childhood from my parents and my peers for various reasons. And I learned that if I just did kind of a 3-step process, recognize, I'll call them good facts, typically small in everyday life. You get something done. Your kid crawls into your lap. You finally get the kids to bed. Your friend just thanks you for something. You recognize that you dealt with a tough situation. It wasn't perfect, but you dealt with it pretty well and you got through it, and okay, whatever it might be, you look out, see the stars. Wow, they're still shining no matter what's happening down here on planet Earth. Something happens, look for the good facts. And then, in my case, as this shy, very inadequate, felt inadequate, dorky kid in college, a couple guys on my dorm floor would say, "Hey, Hanson, come over here, we're having pizza." Or a girl would smile at me. 2 girls would smile at me. Boy, that was a big day. Good facts. Second, help yourself have a good experience as a result. All too often, we don't notice the good facts in our lives, first of all, and because of the negativity bias, we fixate on the bad ones. And second, when we notice them, we kind of shrug it off. Oh yeah, they like me. I don't know. I don't feel liked. Oh, I got something done. I don't feel like accomplished.
Oh, and it wasn't enough, right? I mean, so you and I share an inadequacy bond.
Yeah,
We can come back to that. But yeah, like we'll minimize those things, or we'll even, I feel like in the case of somebody smiling at you, it's like, oh no, they were smiling at the person behind me. Or they, it's like they can't accept the compliment.
Yeah, that's totally right. We're not psychotic. We see it, but we just don't let ourselves feel it. And also to do that, you have to be prepared to feel beneficial, usually mild, but beneficial feelings and sensations along the way. And then crucially, the third step, recognize the good fact, let it become a good experience, take in that beneficial experience, stay with it for a breath or longer so that the neurons that are firing together have enough time to wire together and hardwire that beneficial experience bit by bit, synapse by synapse, into your nervous system. So that is kind of the takeaway. Aha, try not to waste those beneficial experiences on your brain, and realize that by opening up to them and letting them land inside, it will make you stronger, and it will make you more able to deal with the challenges of life while also feeling a lot happier along the way.
I love it. In fact, I was going to ask you, you've got a beautiful quote right at the top of your Instagram right now. It says, "We have a sacred power inside ourselves to help ourselves actually heal a little, grow a little, awaken a little every day in lasting ways." And, I love your work that talks about how we have this innate, sacred is a word that doesn't get used very much, right? But I'm with you 100% that we have these sacred powers. And I love how you use something that can feel so deceptively small. But I bet if, for people that aren't as familiar with this kind of sacred innate power, they doubt it, and they have a lot of trust issues and trauma issues, to start doing this daily, once a day and twice a day. And next thing you know, you're doing it dozens of times a day. It strikes me that this deceptively small practice can be a transformative one.
I know it is, and it's backed up by science, which is really interesting. As people develop traits, not just states of mind or being, but traits, increasingly they're like this, like traits of mindfulness or resilience or self-worth or positive mood, happiness, patience, and so on. The development of that is almost always bit by bit by bit. And there's this proverb that says, "Think not lightly of good, saying it will not come to me, drop by drop." Yeah, think not lightly of good, saying it will not come to me. Drop by drop is the water pot filled. Likewise, the wise one, gathering it little by little, fills oneself with good. And that is so important to recognize at a time when we feel pushed around, helpless. People feel helpless and hopeless in all kinds of ways, probably more than almost, which is so ironic because there's so many things that have been actually good developments in the last 10, 100,000 years, with obviously some serious catastrophes we're heading toward, unfortunately.
Just a few in the middle, but okay.
Yeah, but anyway, but still. So what's really wonderful, and it's understandable to feel, what do you do about the economy, culture, storms heading your way? What effect can you have on global warming? What can you do with your kids? The older they get, the less influence you have. Darn, but good. Anyway, but meanwhile, as I said, we have this sacred power inside our own being to learn a little and grow a little and heal a little every day. And that little, compared to nothing, but that little adds up and up and up over the course of a month, a year, and a lifetime.
Oh my God. Yeah. The drop by drop. And I live here in the Rocky Mountains. I look outside and I'm reminded of geologic time. And there are certain places in Colorado where there's been such massive erosion where these hoodoos and there's a place in the Garden of the Gods called Balanced Rock or Balancing Rock. I think it's Balanced Rock. And it's like this has been there for millions of years, and it seems so improbable. It's on this, I don't even know, maybe 20 square inches. I mean, some teeny tiny bit of sedimentary rock or whatever the rock is that's strongest that managed to hold. And it just, that drop by drop, when I think about how that has carved mountains and valleys, and that's what we're talking about. And it's something I talk with my kids about a lot when I think about encouraging them to read, encouraging them, and my boys are 12 and 14. And I think of it the same with myself. I feel like whether it's, we're talking about our inner lives and drop by drop, scanning for the positive, and like you say, recognizing the good facts, helping yourself have that good experience, taking in the beneficial experience and for a breath or two, so that really becomes wired into our nervous system, along with, I think, knowledge and wisdom, as opposed to information, right? Can be, it accumulates almost sentence by sentence, or videos can be good too. Like here we are on a podcast, and no shame against those things. But I'm with you in terms of being really intentional, how that can be transformative over time. I think the challenge is in our society, there's so much hurt and heartache that it's hard to feel good about drop by drop is my very strong sense, right? Because and because you're a clinician, it
seems so small compared to what we need.
When you're when you're in pain, you want to get out of pain first and foremost, right? And that's our nervous system saying, kind of fight or flight and all those things. So on the one hand, I'm with you, and yet at the same time, given how much hurt and heartache and anxiety and fear people are in, I guess my question for you is, what do you recommend to people now? Yes, I'm with you in terms of these 3 steps, but is there a hack when people, and especially when this podcast comes out, we'll have just, I don't want to say overcome, but we've had the elections, and that is causing many, many, many millions of people to feel a lot of all sorts of emotions. Let's face it. Some people are celebrating, and then others are reeling and despairing even, right? And then there's some people in the middle that are kind of their fingers crossed, hoping for the best. And then, we're going into the holiday season, and I've heard from a lot of friends, oh gosh, this is going to be an especially tough holiday season, where families and friends who have different political persuasions are coming together. So what can people do now who are feeling triggered to pull themselves back and not, certainly ideally not make it worse, but maybe get to a place where they're calmer so that they can recognize the good facts, right? And then start to build, if you will, kind of build that foundation, right? It's almost like you have to put out the fire first before you build the foundation. But I'd love your advice for what we can do when we're feeling overwhelmed.
That's great. The nervous system's pretty complicated. 85 billion neurons, they're averaging several thousand connections each, giving us several hundred trillion little microprocessors. And I think our mind is even more complicated than that. So the more complicated things are, the more important it is, I think, to boil them down and to simplify. And so I'll just offer, including from my own direct experience, simple things that I use. First, deal with the bad, whatever it is. If you are upset, you are upset. We got to start there. If Uncle Bob is guaranteed to just start raging politically, especially after a few beers, maybe you don't sit next to Uncle Bob, or you make sure you have transportation set up to leave early. Deal with the bad as best you can. Sometimes it means stepping back from it, reducing contact with certain things. Sometimes it means just shoring yourself up inside so you can deal with it. Whatever it is real. Second, turn to the good that is also true. So even as Uncle Bob, let's say, is ranting away, you can notice that the food you're chewing tastes good. Yo, Thanksgiving turkey or tofu burger or something, it tastes good. You look around the room, inside yourself, you know that his rants are just not affecting your fundamental inner being. They're a mild annoyance and aggravation that'll probably be over in a handful of minutes, and then you're going to move on with your life. Even if you're stuck there for an hour, you're going to go home afterwards. So turn to the good that is also true. The negativity bias is trying to control you. I've been a therapist a long time. It's made me more compassionate and also blunter and tougher. Bottom line, who's the boss of your own mind?
Amen. Who's the boss of your own mind? That's what I like.
Yeah, right on. And so like Uncle Bob's trying to get in your head, or your reactivity to Uncle Bob is trying to hijack you. Hey, what's good for you? Be the boss of your own mind. And, so you're turning to the good that's also true, because there's always so much else good that's true. And then third, take in the good. This biz I'm talking about emotional memory, positive neuroplasticity, filling yourself up from the inside out. Any single time you do that will not usually change your life, although occasionally there are these life-changing moments. But with really, most people, being blunt, are very competent externally and very incompetent internally. And yet,
you're not joking. That's why we're in a crisis.
Inner competence is vastly more influential about your success, your income, the person you end up staying with, how happy you are, your health, your longevity, right? And inner competence comes from growing the good inside. So, what do you want to do? And I can tell you, my experience, most people spend less than a minute a day deliberately developing themselves in lasting ways. They'll even listen to your podcast, Andrea. I'm sorry, and I know they do it with ours. And it just kind of washes through their
it's entertainment,
awareness.
Right? It's kind of, it's like time
elevator
pass.
music. It's nice, it's cool, and it's better than the alternative. But did you grow? Did you change for the better as a result of listening to Andrea? So everybody who listens to Andrea, listen to Andrea.
Well,
Let it sink in.
Yeah, I would say let's go
in the good.
Yeah, I mean that to me, there are
a minute a day, maybe 5 minutes a day if you're really a top performer. That's what we're talking about here. But I guarantee if people do it, it'll change their day because they'll be looking for the good, even if they just do it for a minute, and they'll be feeling what's good, and it'll change their brain and their body. And if they do a few minutes a day, and if they do it a few days in a row, they're going to feel different. And if you do it a few weeks in a row, a few minutes a day, a few weeks in a row will change your life forever.
I mean, amen. And one of my favorite quotes has always been, everybody wants to transform, nobody wants to change. And so
That's good.
Yeah, it's good.
That's right up there with, I love humanity, I just hate people.
Right. Okay, come on. This is better than that. But yes, I don't disagree. But I'm with you, and I'm just going to repeat this for everybody. Number one, if you're next to insufferable Uncle Bob, and we're going to come back to that because I have people that I'm close to who are like, I'm out. I'm going no contact. I'm like, wait, hold on. I don't know that that's the answer quite yet. For some people it is. So we'll come back to that. We're encouraging you to deal with the bad, just straight on, have a plan, deal with the bad. 1, 2, turn to the good that's true, whether it's your tofurkey, or, you're going to look forward to the pumpkin pie from Costco or whatever it is. And then, like you say, you take in the good from the inside out and really commit, even if it's just a minute a day for a few days.
Or half a breath. There you are with Bob. And you just remember, hey, when I was 12 years old, Bob took me fishing, or Bob said some funny thing, or I happen to know that Bob has chronic back pain, and no wonder he's kind of cranky all the time and turns toward this or that. So, and so suddenly now you're having that moment. Stay with it for half a breath. That's about 4 seconds.
Well, I'd love to even add, and I would love to add to that because I felt it in my body, how often, whether it's Uncle Bob or, maybe it's somebody at my work or any number of places where it's like, oh, like I'm kind of dreading this thing, and I'll just somehow there'll be this moment of grace and my heart will open, and that person is suddenly not a threat or an enemy. And it's like, I've got compassion and curiosity, and suddenly they're no longer an insufferable pain in my neck. And so I'm such a passionate advocate for when we can, when I can, when you can, show up with that open heart, with curiosity and empathy, because that often will change how Uncle Bob regards you, right? I mean, it's happened to me a million times, and it's like, oh my God, like, yeah, they're all, we're all. I feel like there's meme after meme about all of us are, suffering and being challenged in ways that so many others aren't aware of. And so when I think about how we can appreciate that is the case, and these people that are that can be so challenging to us, if we can meet them with that a little bit more compassion. And I realize some people are genuinely, they just want to mow you over, right? So I don't want to sit here and say be a doormat to the people who want to mow you over. I promise I don't. But in my experience, the vast majority who are difficult and even insufferable, there can be an opportunity to disarm that situation by how we show up.
I think that's really true. And gosh, there's so many examples of this. One, I go back to kind of a teaching from the Buddha himself. And I pay attention to what Jesus says, as best we know, about his own direct experience, his own direct practice. Theology, I'm not that interested in. I want to hear from the saints.
Amen. I'm with you.
Yeah, in all kinds of, including indigenous, First Nations, Native people, the people who are really developed in their practice. Like, how do you do that, right? What's going on? And what comes down to us 2,500 years ago is the Buddha saying, as he was not yet enlightened, on his way, still a work in progress, he said, painful, racking feelings arose, but they did not invade my mind and remain. Bingo. Yeah, it's understandable, depending on your own values and what you understand to be true. It's normal. We are a moral animal. It's normal to be alarmed, outraged, even disgusted by other people in various ways. Just think about an extreme version of that. You're walking down the street, suddenly see, I won't get graphic here just to avoid, alarming people, but you see someone doing a terrible thing to a woman, a child, a dog, and you would be disgusted by it morally. You'd have an issue around it. There's a place for that, but we don't want to get invaded and occupied by those reactions, right? They can pass through awareness. We can use them to alert us to what we care about, but we don't want to be used by them, right? That to me is the big difference. And part of that is just a decision where we can kind of gird our loins, as it were. We can prepare ourselves, strap on, put on the armor.
What is that? I think it was a Monty Python, Gird Your Loins, or one of those funny movies.
That's right. That's exactly right.
But it's a good metaphor.
Of it as, I'm a sci-fi dork, and it's like shields up, Scotty.
Yeah,
I'm walking in.
Totally.
And it's kind of like that. And then I'll tell you another little thing that helps me too, is to keep reminding myself that almost certainly anything significant that I care about is not at risk. With Uncle Bob or the setting, I'll actually share with you, if you'll bear with me, and I'm going to give a little talk about it at our Wednesday online meditation thingy tonight, so it's fresh in mind.
Hang on, I want to make sure everybody listening knows that Rick conducts a free meditation every Wednesday. Is it at 6 p.m. Pacific?
Yeah, it's 6 p.m. Pacific time.
Okay, yeah, so
7 for you.
You're right, and 9 for our East Coast friends. And would they find it at rickhanson.com?
Yeah, exactly. Or just Google me, Rick Hanson Meditation. It's free. Usually around 400 people show up.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Great group of people. Any newcomers are welcome. It's on Zoom. It's very straightforward. Meditation and talk. It's lightly Buddhist without getting too technical about it. So it has been a comfort for me recently Andrea, because, I do care about world events. And without picking sides here, I think a reasonable person can look out at the world and see what I'm about to describe. You ready? Imagine a triangle with 6 levels, and each of the levels is about 10 times bigger than the level above it, right? So this is going to be on a logarithmic scale for those total dorks among us, me included. But just imagine a triangle. The top level is actual harms from one government or another, okay? Anywhere in the world, actual harms to other people and to you directly. Very often there will be harms to other people, but they will not affect you directly. That doesn't mean to dismiss them. It just means to recognize that fact. Whatever it is, and I'm not minimizing this, actual harms.
You're contextualizing it, right? I mean, which is really helpful, right?
To comfort your own mind.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Uncle Bob is spewing about this or that, saying unbelievably outrageous things that are right up there with the theory that the earth is flat. I mean, they are so ridiculous and so offensive. They're in that second category now of spectacle, inflammatory, provocative, trolling spectacle, which gradually does toxify the culture, but it doesn't harm us directly, certainly not in the near term. It's just spectacle, all right? And you can just see how many people get caught up in the spectacle and outraged.
I can see their faces in my mind's eye.
Oh, yeah, I can see them on television, and they're well-intended. Okay, third layer. Even as real harms and outrageous spectacle are occurring, mostly in ways unknown to us, tens, hundreds of millions of people and organizations worldwide are each day making the world a better place. Medical advances, PTA groups, moms coming together to put a stop sign next to a kid's school, nonprofits of many, many kinds, organizations increasing, civil society, think tanks, researchers, journalists. It's extraordinary. I mean, my journey, as I've been a clinician for 50 years, basically, one way or another. And just recently, I've become much more aware of sort of the nonprofit, help the world be better stuff. It's incredible, the quantity of things that are happening. And yeah, we're still in trouble, but just imagine how bad this earth would be without those efforts, which, by the way, predominantly are done by women in unpaid labor of all kinds, weaving the fabric of civil society together. That's the third layer. It's huge. It's really huge. And then the fourth layer is just having living our lives, playing soccer with the kids, making dinner, making love, watching TV, going for a walk, yakking with your friends, laughing about this or that. Just living your lives. Think of the people throughout history who've lived their lives in much worse systems than anything we face today. Right? That's the fourth level. And then the fifth level, it's a big planet, and it's an even bigger solar system, galaxy, and universe. And time just keeps twirling away. I remember walking around in Greece some time ago and just seeing these ruins there and realizing 3,000 years ago, people just like me were having dinner, laughing with their children in that kind of home and worried about what's going on and, will the crops come in and does my wife still love me or stuff like that. It's a big universe. And then last, the sixth level for me is the ultimate, mysterious, unborn, undying, eternal, timeless, divine ground of all. Yep. And so when we get caught up in worrying about these harms and spectacle, it's really important to appreciate these other things that are also true. This is not philosophy or new age, spiritual bypassing. This is fact. This is true. And because of the negativity bias and other people, they try to fixate our attention on the top and second layers and, trick us that we're not incredibly powerful in the layers underneath that.
Yeah, it is a super helpful context for that. I think what I'm gonna push back maybe a little. I agree, and I think the challenge is, and maybe it's just rewinding our conversation, because I feel like if your nervous system is hijacked, and it was hijacked even before the election. Now it's super hijacked. And you're in that, genuine fight or flight mode, right? You're addicted to stress. You are not the boss of your own mind, right? For whatever reason, right? And this is
okay. What do you do when you're hijacked? Right.
Well, but when that is when your homeostasis is one of dysregulation, what you described is, I get it, you get it, a lot of us get it, but I feel like you've got to your prefrontal cortex has to be online to say, okay, that's true, I can believe that. I think the problem is so many people are so chronically dysregulated that just, some people
just sails over their heads.
Yeah,
I get it.
and they would even say, you're gaslighting me because,
I know,
right?
I agree.
Because, the world is burning, and the way they get into, not wrongly, global climate change and so forth.
Yeah.
So, how do the people who are saying, "Oh my God," and then I have to work 3 jobs, I can't put food on my plate, it's like all
totally
those
get that.
objections.
Yeah.
How do you kind of thread that needle?
Well, first, I totally relate to it, and I'm appalled at the ways in which, basically a very tiny, tiny fraction of the 8 billion of us is driving the bus that contains all of us over a cliff, and which they often have sort of parachutes. They'll get through the next 100, 200 years, while literally billions of people will starve to death. So yeah, I'm not trying to minimize this at all. So what do you do? First off, recognize that you're triggered, you're plugged in, you're reactivated, you're upset. And in that, I have this like 4-step, 5-step, of course, because I have a list always. My kids laugh. First aid kit. Number 1, notice you're upset. Name it to yourself. Technically, that starts giving you some breathing room from it. I'm so pissed off. I want to rip Uncle Bob's head off. How could he say that? I'm freaking out. I belong to some group that's now being targeted by the government. I really care about this or that. Name it, feel it. Try to do it with mindfulness, with some spaciousness, so you're not so invaded and occupied by it. But yeah, you feel what you feel. You always have to start there. Longtime therapist, you have to start with what's true for you. Second, have compassion for yourself. Self-compassion is enormously effective at calming us down and making us stronger. It's not wallowing in self-pity. It's having that moment of, this sucks. I'm not going to swear in this interview, but I might drop a few F-bombs here. Otherwise, this is not good.
Sucks, Rick.
Yeah, there you are. And so self-compassion, where you bring a warmth to yourself and a supportiveness and a respect and kind of a kindness to yourself, that's emotional. It's even tender. It might take only a handful of seconds as you're trying to figure out what to do about what Bob just did. But compassion for yourself. Third, a muscular response in which you get on your own side.
Ooh, what's that?
Yeah, what's that, right? It took me a bunch of years before I realized, Andrea, that half my clients had that question. It was like I was filling them with gas to make things good, but the pilot light was out. They were not on their own side. They were not for themselves. They were loyal to others. They were a good friend to others, compassion for others, support others. They would come through for others. They would stick up for others. Boom. They would not do it for themselves. And I'm not being critical. Many of them, for example, were women who'd been taught not to stand up for themselves, not to be for themselves, not to be strong and tough and blunt and demanding.
Oh my God. Well, yeah, you have to keep things safe for yourself. There's probably more
dangerous.
than maybe even thousands of years of
for sure.
women, and some men too. But I feel like for many women,
all that. And then you have culture. Certain cultures are very deferential. Point being, for me, one of the great psychological characteristics is moxie, where you're just, you're spunky, you're sparky, you're feisty, you're on your own side. You have pluck. Okay, so that's the third thing. And, it really, and you can train in mindfulness off stage so that when Bob starts waving the turkey leg around like he's going to bash you, you're more resourced. But in the moment, recognize you're upset, try to get some spaciousness around it mindfully. Second, self-compassion. Third, kind of a muscular response. Hey, you're sticking up for yourself. You matter. Third, make a plan. What are you going to do? You're not dead in the water. Even if your plan is to make a plan later, or something, that's a plan. Maybe your plan is just let it go. This is Thanksgiving. Everybody knows, this is a technical term. Everybody knows that Bob is an asshole. And
a very technical term, right? You have to have a PhD to know that.
Oh, yeah. It's in the DSM. Asshole. It's got an ICD-9 code. Right. There you go. And anyway, make a plan. Or maybe your plan is, I'm never having Thanksgiving with that asshole again. Or I'm going to explain to my kids afterward that what Bob said was racist and bigoted and not okay. Not okay at all. What's your plan? And then last, enact your plan. Action binds anxiety.
Hang on. Enact your plan. I'm writing it all down. I'm going to do a quick little summary. And then you said action.
Action binds anxiety.
Action binds. What does that mean?
Usually we're partly upset because we feel helpless. We're stuck. We're trapped with Bob, or we're trapped with our own illness or financial situation or something. And we're helpless outrage. There's a lot of helpless outrage these days related, politically. If you don't like the results in your country, and most of these elections were very narrow, just factually, less than 50% of American voters reelected Donald Trump. A majority of American voters chose someone else. We can respect the results of an election while recognizing those facts. So, my point being that, that take action, do what you can. Anyway, okay, what do you think about all that? That's my first aid kit.
I know, I love it. And I'm going to just do a quick little summary. So you've got 5 steps. Number 1 is name it, feel it. And to me, that is it's so empowering because so often, I'm going to be honest, like I'm having a little bit of a tough day. And there's a part of me that's like, Andrea, like, come on, like get better. And I was like, oh, it's going to get a better day because I'm going to see Rick in a little bit, and it's going to sound stupid, but so often this stuff is just so basic and you kind of suffer alone. When I think about, rather than me saying to myself, hey, just get over it, it was like, no, I'm just like, I just don't feel like, I'm just kind of having a bad day today, right? So this idea of giving yourself permission to name it and to feel it, to me, is particularly, like you say, for so many of us, that it's like we don't give ourselves permission. Like, we got to be the strong one. So I love that. Then number 2, self-compassion. And this sucks. And being able to say this sucks. I love
with
your
warmth and caring.
And that becomes a practice. And
That's right.
And all of this becomes a practice, right? That's the whole point of this being a neuroplasticity, an exercise in neuroplasticity. Your muscular response, never heard of that. That's super cool, to stay loyal to yourself. And that, I feel like that can be a hard one, where it's like, oh no, I need to put everybody else first. That I don't even think it needs to be binary, whether it's putting yourself or somebody else first. I think it's just giving yourself a sense of grace and gentleness, and that can feel hard and unfamiliar for a lot of us. And
you
then
matter. It's like you matter, and you think about how you would be strong for somebody else. Can you be strong in that way for yourself?
And then you said, and I love this, make a plan for number 4, and then 5, enact your plan. And I love how you said action binds anxiety. And I want to come back to this as an entrepreneur. This has been one of my superpowers. I mean, we've in the digital publishing industry, and I think it holds true as a entrepreneur, or really any other role that we are in, when we're facing headwinds and fear and things that we don't like that feel outside of our control, I figured out a long time ago that being able to make a plan and knowing that even the plan, things can change, but having a plan, I feel like it is your prefrontal cortex taking over and saying, okay, here's what I'm going to do. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to do something else. And there is something really concretely helpful about and it sounds so simple, but I feel like it punches above its weight in its utility. So I'm all for your first aid kit, and I appreciate it. And I hope all of our listeners do. I want to go back, and I know we need to go, and we've got maybe just a handful of minutes. So for the people who are saying, I'm done, F Uncle Bob, F all those people that, I think don't care about the environment. They don't care about democracy. F all those people. What do you say? I mean, and I guess one valid response could be, okay, right? But I don't know that that's the best answer, either globally or even when I think about families being ripped apart, and that's been happening over time. And I guess, and I know I'm asking you a question, I'm giving the answers, but I think the only other thing I want to add is when you feel like one side is the one that's always conceding, and it's the other side that is never conceding, and the side that feels like it's never the beneficiary of the concessions. It's like, F that. I don't want to do that anymore. So that was like 14 questions rolled into one. What do you recommend for people who are just like, I'm done, I'm out. I don't like Uncle Bob. I don't like Aunt Betty. I don't like any of them.
So the framing of your question is, I just want to acknowledge it in the time that we have. You're really talking about people who are upset, deeply concerned about the rightward tilt around the world, even recently in New Zealand, of, democracies, which are also being, let's face it as well, manipulated to various extents by billionaires and oligarchs and foreign leaders to destroy democracies themselves by disrupting the notion of the common good, by being divisive. All right. Still, like the U.S. election that just occurred was the largest, freest, and most competent and fairest election in the history of the world. And for the first time in 20 years, the popular vote ended up with a Republican president. And so it's going to be ironic if that free election results in an undermining of democracy. So you and I are talking now about the people who are upset about the current situation, or those who love them, even if they frankly voted for the other guy or person. Okay, so that's the framing. I want to acknowledge that. This is something I've thought about deeply, and I really recommend people go to my website. I have a section called Resources for Turbulent Times, including my most recent essay, which I think is one of the best things I've written, honestly, called What to Do When the Bottom Falls Out, or What to Do When It Feels Like the Bottom Falls Out. And it has 4 fundamental practices, and in there is kind of an analysis of what is true factually and politically in the current moment. So for me, the quick summary is take heart, see clearly, do what you can, and find peace. Take heart means...
Take heart. Okay,
yeah, take heart means, protect your heart, get the toxic influences out of it. Don't keep mainlining helpless outrage on Twitter, right? And also connect with other people from the heart. Realize that with people like Uncle Bob, you can hold them in your heart while being crystal clear about, frankly, the crazy cakes beliefs they have that are just not true at all. And the real hypocrisy in their value system, that at a personal level, they really believe in telling the truth and playing fair, but they're all in with political leaders who do the opposite routinely. So, you can be crystal clear. You can have compassion while also standing up for yourself. So take heart. Second, see clearly. See the facts. It's not hard to get the basic facts, really. It's not hard. From, Wikipedia, university websites, mainstream media that corrects itself, people on the sidelines that are kind of fringy. But over time you see who's consistently right and who, frankly, turns out to be a crank. See clearly, really see clearly. And then third, do what you can. Vote, get informed, sign those petitions, send that money. Even if it doesn't make any tangible result out there, it changes things in here. And I can say for myself that very briefly, what I see is that this is going to take me a moment to say it. I'll just say it like this. What do we see? 2/3 of the people in America either liked Donald Trump or did not care enough to vote for his opponent. 2 out of 3 adults in America. We
That's
have
crazy.
50 to 60 million
Wow.
who are not registered to vote. Yeah, we have 230 million could vote. About 160 million are registered. And of that 160 million, it was less than one, it was about 1.5% difference between Harris and Trump, and about 12 million people voted for Jill Stein and other third-party candidates, which would have been the margin of victory, obviously, for Harris if 2 million of those people had swung to her. So it was really close. Here's the thing. The fundamental issue is that people don't care. They just don't care. And so that's what we need to focus on. We need to focus, especially with young people, on helping people widen the circle of caring. And we need to deal with these pernicious actors like Elon Musk, to name a name, who spent $132 million in political advertising in the last weeks of the campaign, or Vladimir Putin, who are working really hard to get people to care only about their small tribe and not about the greater good of their whole country, let alone the greater good of humanity, let alone the greater good of all life together on this planet. So to me, we need to really go after, over time, widening the circle of caring for people. Yeah.
And then you said number 4
then
is
last,
find peace.
How do you find peace? For me, it helps to find peace in the good that endures. And this might, again, if you're really upset, you need to start with, working through being upset. But as soon as you can, look out the window. Literally, neurologically, that's a trick. Raise your gaze to the horizon. That'll calm you down. Take the big picture view. That'll calm you down. Exhale slowly. That'll calm you down. Hug your kids. Watch a funny cat video on YouTube. Look at the good that endures. Really, it might sound kind of weirdly cognitive. It's not. It's, this tree is going to be here long after these tyrants rise and fall.
Oh, as a Coloradan, I look out at my big ponderosa pines in my yard and the mountains that circle us. And it does, to your point, that it does put our human foolishness into perspective. And it's helpful to have these ways because, ultimately, I'm going to go back to what you said toward the beginning. Being the boss of your own, I would say, your own mind and your own heart, right? Because
the whole being of you.
Thing. Well, I'll say this, and then we'll wrap up my.
And then I'm going to finish with a fundamental truth. Then I'm going to drop the mic and disappear.
Then that's it. I always say to my 11 or my 12 and 14-year-olds, when they're really emotional, they can be even more easily manipulated. So when I think about having, it is an insight job, it is a personal choice to say, I'm going to be so intentional about finding that peace because I don't want to get even more manipulated.
That's right.
And it feels like as a practical matter, that is a superpower. Okay, you got the last word here, Rick.
Well, I'll just say before the last word, authoritarian leaders, because that's what we see in the world. We see this rising authoritarianism based on kind of tribalistic, fear and grievances. Okay. These authoritarians, they try to drain the strength of the people. They try to make us feel helpless, and they try to divide us and turn us against each other. So it's very important to see through that spectacle and do what you can. Stay informed, vote, join with others, and also operate at that level between individual action and central government, where there's a lot of opportunity to keep making things better meanwhile, right? So to me, that's really, really important. It's also true in terms of finding peace, that deep inside everyone is an inherent stillness, an inherent peacefulness. You have to sometimes let your mind get a little quieter to see between and under all the surface turbulence, this peacefulness it's almost like being in the ocean. There's a storm above, but 10 feet down, it's quiet. There you are, just with your scuba gear or something, just hanging out. There's a deep stillness in all of us, okay? And then most fundamentally, for me, wrapping a lot of stuff up. At the end of the day, each of us has our own individual life. You have your life. I got my life. What's the Mary Oliver line? Tell me, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And my own stance about that, summarized in my own politics, are basically summarized as I love children and hate bullies. There are a lot of implications from that. And to say as well, for me, end of the day, fuck them. I'm going to do what I can, and I'm going to be happy. Or I'm going to live well meanwhile.
Totally. You can just bring that agency right back to yourself. And that, I feel like when you have that agency and you have that sense of just that sense of agency, I feel like you're that much more empowered to be able to, have that wild ride, like you quoted. Rick, I can always talk to you for hours. I'm sorry we have to go.
Same.
I know you have something else you need to get to, but thanks so much for being on Getting Open. I love talking to you, and I look forward to having you back.
It's great. And I'll just say, Andrea, that, again, what are you doing here? You and I are right now in that third layer in which we are people who are working hard to make the world a little better. And there are tens, maybe hundreds of millions of us around the world today doing good stuff. And it's so good to know that. So anyway, I'm glad to be here and honored as well. You take care.
All right. Thank you, Rick.
Bye-bye.
Oh my God. I love Rick Hanson. He is amazing. I hope you did too. I hope this show was helpful no matter where you are on the political spectrum, no matter what you're doing for the holiday season. I hope that you found useful, insightful takeaways. And remember that deep stillness is always within you. To me, that is one of the greatest gifts of talking to Rick Hanson is just, oh my gosh, his wisdom. I can feel it. I hope you do too. I hope you, if you enjoyed the episode, rate it. I'd love your comments. I'd love your feedback. Follow us, like us. The team behind Getting Open is incredible. We're bringing the show to you with our whole heart. So thanks for listening, and I look forward to seeing you back here soon.